So I hope you enjoyed making cups of tea with your child. I would like to now just talk about a few things that you could observe whilst the child is doing the activity, so you can learn a little bit more about why the activity is useful for children's development. First of all, we can think about the bilateral integration that is happening when the child does this activity. Bilateral integration means that one hand is doing one thing whilst the other hand is doing something different. Bilateral integration. And children need this skill, this ability, in a huge amount of their work and their learning. You can even see how eventually they will need to hold the paper with one hand and write with the other. And so bilateral integration is a foundational physical skill that paves the way for later academic learning. It's fundamental to a child's development. There are many studies which show how fine motor integration and bilateral integration prepare the cognitive abilities such as working memory, cognitive flexibility and impulse control that a child needs to be present with their learning. We've seen that developing physical skills leads to an improvement in these cognitive functions, and that prepares the way for the child's learning in all sorts of ways. If you'd like to see some of the research related to this, please check below in the links. Another aspect we could talk about is one-to-one correspondence. And this means that the words of the rhyme are corresponding with the beats of the song and the physical movements. So in all of these activities, we are integrating language, rhythm, movement and music. And so in this rhyme, on the simplest one, you could see how we went, how to make a cup of tea. All the words go with the movements. Now when you see young children doing this, you will see that the words and the actions do not really match up. They do not correspond together. And so slowly the children learn to put the movements with the rhythm. And so it's another thing you can observe in your child as you're watching them do it. And it will be easier to do one-to-one correspondence with this one than it will be when we're swapping hands more quickly, because there is more for the child to, more ways in which they have to organise their body. They are trying to say the words, so coordinate their mouths to say the words and remember the melody, and coordinate their bodies to do the different movements. So there's a lot going on here. And so slowly, as we move on to a more difficult rhyme, the children will find their one-to-one correspondence again. And if you look at the next videos, you'll find some much harder hand movements, which will again offer more challenge. One-to-one correspondence is really important in all aspects of the children's learning, and you'll see it in early numeracy when the child starts counting things. When a child first counts, there is no relationship with the counting and the number of objects when they are very young, when they don't really know how to count. There will be some objects in front of them and they just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They just count and they point, and they are imitating or playing with the idea of counting, but they're not really counting. And then as the child develops, they learn to go 1, 2, 3, and each number goes with an object as they're counting. And you'll see whilst they do that, they are having to hold in their working memory what number they're up to, whilst also remember what number comes next in the sequence. So that again relates to this idea of these cognitive functions, also known as executive functions, which are important for a child's learning: working memory, impulse control, cognitive flexibility. So one-to-one correspondence is another thing you can look at in your child.